Revelation 2150. From the 13th of November 1941. Activity of the spirit spark in man. The turning point in earthly life is the moment when the soul gives the spirit within itself the freedom to swing upwards in order to make contact with the spiritual beyond the human soul. The earlier this process begins, the sooner the human being reaches the degree of maturity which is the prerequisite for receiving light and knowledge. The human being is ignorant as long as the spirit in him is not yet active. As long as the divine spark slumbers in the human being, for the spiritual cannot reveal itself to the human soul, it is, as it were, incapable of grasping a spiritual communication, for its kingdom is earth, matter. And spiritual things are still completely alien to it. Only when the spiritual spark in itself becomes active and tries to convey knowledge from the spiritual kingdom does it begin to understand. The human being will have no understanding for that which is not earthly visible or tangible as long as he does not concern himself more closely with it. But he only does the latter when the earthly visible and tangible is no longer enough for him, that is, when the fulfillment of bodily desire seems unattractive to him, thus he disregards the body and longs for higher knowledge. When he suddenly sees a shortcoming in his present state. When the life he leads is not enough for him and he turns his attention to things which he cannot fathom with mere mental understanding. Then he broods, that is, he sends his spirit upwards. And now the spirit connects with the spiritual outside himself, which corresponds to the nature of the human being. That is, if the human being is good and noble, truth-loving and desirous of God, then his spirit connects with the spiritual, which was in the same striving, which therefore embodied the good, the true and the divine, but which, in contrast to the human being, is already on a level of perfection which enables it to instruct the spiritual being entrusted to it. So what the spirit now receives are wisdoms which only concern the spiritual kingdom, which can therefore certainly be imparted to the human soul, but which do not concern earthly questions but merely promote the human being's spiritual higher development. This higher development, however, only appears significant to people who can separate themselves from earthly experience, but to the others it is an empty concept, for their souls simply cannot grasp that they can live a life apart from the earthly, which seems much more appealing and purposeful to them. Only when the soul releases the spirit within itself can it initiate the soul into the glories of the spiritual kingdom. And then the soul likewise strives upwards, that is, it eagerly desires the results of the spiritual flight upwards, into the spiritual kingdom. For it recognizes the value of what the spirit tries to impart to it, it recognizes it and seeks to make itself worthy of the attention from the spiritual kingdom. Thus the human being consciously strives for knowledge, for light. And this conscious striving also brings him light, the human being becomes knowledgeable and his earthly life brings him the right success. The higher development of his soul, which is the purpose and goal of his earthly life. Amen.